A disturbing trend growing in Wisconsin. Two separate studies released this fall show an increase in domestic violence homicides. NBC 15's Colt Molesky talked with a local organization about what's prompting this trend. Colton, how do we get here?
Michelle, the Violence Policy Center looked nationwide at the number of women murdered by men in single offender, single victim homicides. In 2020, Wisconsin ranked 8th on that list. I'm told part of the problem is still a lack of funding.
Not only are we seeing higher numbers of people experiencing domestic violence, but they're reporting increased severity of domestic violence.
Domestic Abuse Intervention Services, or DAYS, Executive Director Shannon Berry says the organization saw things get worse at the start of the pandemic.
As people were forced to shelter at home with those who were battering them, as people were losing their income, as they were dealing with other sorts of pressures.
According to recent data from End Domestic Abuse Wisconsin, 80 people died due to domestic violence in 2021, up from 68 the previous year. Barry says places like DAYS offer resources, including training and shelter, but funding is holding back the Dane County organization.
Solutions are there. They just need to be invested in to really meet the actual need of what the community has.
Barry says less than a quarter of domestic violence is reported to police, and privacy laws make sharing information on victims with other organizations a challenge.
Domestic violence continues to be an issue that holds a lot of shame for victims and who may not want to reach out for services because then they have to admit that this is happening to them.
Barry says all that makes local groups crucial for a majority of domestic violence victims. As domestic violence grows, DAYS has seen a decrease in funding, hampering the number of victims they can help.
And for many victims, they really rely on these kind of community-based services, and we can't lose that safety net.
Now, Shannon Berry uses new resources like the new text line for victims as a way funding can help. The line is roughly a month old and allows victims to get help in a more subtle way than a phone call. She argues more funding is the way to combat the growing domestic violence problem in the state. In studio, Colt Molesky, NBC 15 News.
Colton, thank you. And if you or someone you know feels unsafe in a relationship, help is available. You can call the DAYS helpline at 608-251-4445 or that text line at 608-420-4638.